welcome back to Two Who's Review. I'm Alex,
And I'm Fitz.
and we are here for the first 60th anniversary special of the three that are coming out in the coming weeks. We are here to review The Star Beast today. It's the return of David Tennant, and Catherine Tate, and Russell T Davies, and Murray Gold. And it is the first in this sort of loose story arc, which I was revolving around the toy maker. Didn't rock up in this, but he was hinted at, I assume, by the Meep towards the end. We haven't discussed with each other what we thought of this episode yet.
No, we haven't.
Would you like to go first?
Sure. So to put it simply, I didn't like this episode overall. There are a lot of story problems that came in. The bits that I did like about it, though, I did actually really like, and I'm glad that I, as I so often do, I watched this episode a couple of times. Really glad I did, because the second time it made me realize the bits that I liked about it the first time were even better than I had realized, and then it also helped me appreciate some of the things that I maybe was not paying as much attention to. But there are a number of story problems, and they all, for me, link back to the plot in some way or another. We'll get into that. But yeah, there were. I mean, I really hate saying this, Cuff, but honestly, there were certain moments, particularly with the dialogue, that honestly were giving me Chibnall flashbacks.
No, I have 100% the exact same thought, and I know which bits of dialogue you're talking about.
Oh, God.
Look, those are, for me, really isolated moments in an otherwise strong episode.
Right.
I liked it overall. For me, there are, like, the story for me, like, it wasn't amazingly strong, but for me it didn't have to be, because for me this is like filling in a similar role as like a first story with a new doctor and companion, whereas the focus is more on them, and we have like a loose story to tie it all together, but the focus is mainly on those characters. That's what it felt like for me.
I suppose I do see what you mean. I just felt the pacing and the plot felt kind of all over the place, and the whole thing just didn't sort of come together as much as I really wanted it to. I mean, we'll obviously we'll get into all of it, but yeah, like as I say, I like it more now than I did the first time I watched it, but there's still like a lot of problems that I have with the technical elements of the storytelling and the way that it's sort of weaving in.
Sure, and I was really worried about going into this. I worry that I, or maybe even both of us, might be victims of our own overhype.
Yeah, I'd wondered.
Especially coming into this, like we were both like, I think you can hear it on previous episodes of the podcast how giddy we are.
Well, we were so excited.
Yeah, in the anticipation coming up to this, and the fact that it wasn't perfect, I think, might be souring our opinions of this a little.
Yeah, look,
I think there's every chance that the episode is just imperfect and not great overall. But I wonder if this discussion and fleshing out the good and the bad might help us sort of narrow down, okay, no, critically speaking, where does it land?
Yeah, for sure. And I did, as I said, sort of, I was in a bit of a toss-up on where I wanted to sort of place this in my mind. And I think the disappointment was part of it. I think not so much that it's the 60th, but that it's RTD, right?
Yeah.
Because, we both have, frequently and intensely sung the praises of RTD's run in Doctor Who. We both think that it was really spectacular. He managed to bring back the show with flair and style, and also really just overall solid storytelling, especially with the story arcs. Although I think, as we've also both said, his run got better as it went along. Like season 3 and 4, I find to be a bit stronger than 1 and 2. Anyway, that's a other thing. But regardless, yes, I was very, very excited for this. I do think that even objectively beyond the hype, there are still some significant story problems here, because there are some creative decisions which, honestly, Cuff, to be candid, I'm surprised RTD made them. Some of the creative decisions here, not all of them, but some of them, yeah.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because like if we look back at specifically the episodes we've reviewed so far that have been written by RTD, we haven't been his biggest fan.
No,
Uh,
in terms of, as you say, like I think I pointed it out when we did Love and Monsters that I suspected that he was a better showrunner than he was a writer in terms of the scripts he actually wrote. Um,
mm,
and I wonder, again, this is kind of the frustrating thing for me. I want to say that that's, shown here, but for me, it's certainly compared to the stories we've covered, the RTD scripts, this not all of it, but some of it, and maybe even a lot of it feels weaker than some of the stuff we've already covered. Um, and that was I can't tell you, Cuff, how frustrating for me that was to sort of grapple with all of that. Again, the fact that I'm having Chibnall flashbacks with certain elements of this. I
yeah.
mean, oh,
Well, let's put it
mm,
this way at least. I personally think this is still better than 90% of a lot of Chibnall Who.
oh
Like I
yeah,
said,
no, 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 no.
there are elements in certain parts of the dialogue where a lot of the trappings of Chibnall Who starts to shine through.
Oh, for
But for the
sure.
most part, it feels like we're back on track.
Yeah, I think, and I think that's certainly true. Like maybe there are a couple of Chibnall episodes that are better than this. I think
Oh
particularly
no,
the Maxine
100%, yeah.
Alderton stuff, but like,
Yeah, no,
yeah, no, this
definitely.
is better than most of Chibnall's run. And it also must be said, it's very important to point this out. As opposed to Chibnall's run, you really get the sense that RTD really understands these characters,
Yes.
particularly the returning characters, Donna and the Doctor. I
Mhm.
don't think that understanding, particularly with Donna and the Doctor, is translating as well as I would want it to. But you definitely know, okay, this is Doctor Who. These are
Well,
these characters. RTD understands this. We're not getting. This is not a Kablam episode, right? We're not getting the
sure, yeah.
Doctor randomly becoming some nasty corporate shell. So
No, 100%. And
yeah.
maybe that's because a lot of this episode is basically doing the job of getting Donna back to the point where she wants to get into this
Yeah.
one. Maybe moving into the
Yeah.
Wild Blue Yonder and the Giggle will have a more of that Doctor Donna dynamic that we're used to
Yeah.
from the end of Series 4.
Yeah. I think that's true. And I actually wonder, and I'll probably mention this again when we sort of sum up our feelings about this. But
Yeah,
basically, I wonder if indeed this might just be almost like the bad elements in this story. I wonder if it's almost like a first episode jitters. I wonder if is this
potentially.
just a is this just a case of RTD trying to find his feet again,
Well,
with
yeah,
this
that's
world and
my
this story?
that's my impression anyway. Like he's got
Mm,
these three
mm,
specials. I think
yep,
he wanted to play the first one a little more simple than he's going to
yeah,
go because
for
by all
sure.
accounts, and I don't know if you saw the next time trailer for Wild Blue Yonder, but that one, at least by the trailer, seems like it's going to be something of a like a horror thriller kind of thing where it's like just them, just the Doctor and Donna trapped wherever they are, and like I don't know,
You
like
know
it's
what?
difficult to describe from the 30 seconds we've
Yeah,
got. And
you know,
certainly trailers have been misleading in the past.
I don't think
But
I've
at the very least, it
seen it
seems
yet,
way
which
more
is
experimental.
frustrating, but still, yeah. I'll have to check that out. I don't think I've actually watched it yet, but
Mm.
anyway,
Like
so
it seems like
yeah,
that episode is going to have like an incredibly distinct tone compared to this one.
for sure.
And the giggle is, by all intents and purposes, going to be the big finale with the toy maker. So that one's going to
Yeah,
be
yeah, for sure.
huge and bombastic and like
Yeah,
and everything happening all at once. But
yeah,
it seems like for this one, he wanted to play it a bit more simple, do a standard invasion story, just to get the characters back to where we need them to be,
yeah,
establish himself in the writing position again, establish
yeah,
this doctor and this companion for however long we're going to have them, and
mm,
sow seeds as to what's coming. And I think
for
in terms
sure.
of those aspects of the episode, he nailed them.
Hmm.
But let's jump
I
over to timescales.
Yeah, sure, sure.
So, out of 88 votes so far, this
Hmm.
has a rating of 7.3, which for me feels about right. I think
I
you might have things to say about that personally, but
Yeah,
for me, I think this is about where I would put it so far.
no, for me, I think that's too high. For reasons which I'll get into, but yeah, for me, yeah, it's too high. And we'll obviously, like as we often say with these discussions, by the end of this, my feelings may have changed. You may have been able to sway me on it. We'll see it. We'll see
Mm.
how it goes by the end.
By
But at the
by
moment,
all
yeah, it's
accounts,
too high.
and historically speaking, you're going to be the one that sways me because
I I don't know about that, but anyway, we'll
well, no,
we'll
I mean
see how
we've
it goes.
discussed it before. Like it's way easier to convince someone that something's bad than
Yeah,
something's good.
yeah,
So
yeah,
who knows how that'll turn out.
yeah.
It has a 6.9 for plot.
Hmm. Again, uh, too high for me. The plot is very all over the place. And I'll say this now, and I'll obviously get into more detail with it. I think half of this plot doesn't even need to be here. Um, and that I'll just say this now. That half of the plot is the alien invasion stuff. Again, I'll get into detail of why I think that is, but I could do without it. Um,
Okay.
if I'm honest.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Mm,
I'm not necessarily certain I agree with you even just from
sure,
that,
sure.
but maybe when you go into it a bit more,
Yeah, for sure.
you'll understand. 8.6 for acting. Yep, 100%.
Yeah, oh no, the acting is one of the best parts of the whole episode. There is not a
Yeah,
single weak performance I can think of. I think honestly, in a way that's kind
I
of a little low.
I think Yasmin Finney is a little flat as Rose. I don't think
Hmm.
she's particularly expressive, and there are certain lines that are kind of monotone. But like, it's only
Mm.
occasionally. I think for the most
Yeah,
part, she's
yeah,
pretty
sure.
good in this role.
Mm,
But everyone else is firing on all cylinders. David Tennant
mm.
and and Catherine Tate haven't missed a beat.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
also noticed that like David is playing the Doctor slightly differently than he did
Yes.
in the
And I
past,
think
which I
that's
like.
yeah, same. And it's also there's subtle indications of it in the writing as well.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, here's one element. He doesn't seem to be suffering from the same level of post-regeneration madness as most of
Hmm.
the other incarnations have. Now, I assume that's partly because we've got a lot of other things to do in this episode. RTD probably didn't want to spend too much time on that. But even beyond that, there's just something about him that's a little different, little almost a little off. And
Well, I think also that's
I
partly.
think it's deliberate.
Well, there's been some extended media stuff starring the 14th Doctor
Oh,
already, and
neat.
I think maybe that's sort of filled in the gaps a bit so that we don't have to
Sure.
do a lot of that stuff in this episode.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, he's playing the way he's playing it. It's like it's really clear. No, this isn't just the 10th Doctor come back. This is the 14th Doctor. It's ever so slightly different. Um,
Yep.
and I think part that might be part of the reason why. Because you brought up the pacing, and like definitely
Mm,
like the first 5 minutes of this are incredibly fast,
mm,
and I think that is like because to me that's like they're not like that felt a bit like this isn't the 14th Doctor's first adventure. Rather, this is
mm,
like a new place he's landed. He
mm.
doesn't know why he's here, and it's sort
Sure.
of like a few days or weeks into his time as this version of the Doctor.
Hmm.
Because otherwise, he'd be stumbling out of the TARDIS, going, "What? What's all this? Why
Mm.
have I this face? What's going on?" And
Yeah.
he's not doing any of that.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that might be part of the reason why the start of the episode is so fast. Because again, they want to get everything moving quickly. It
Yeah.
doesn't really. It makes things come across as a bit uh, sort of frenzied and uh, inconsistent throughout a lot of the episode, where it sort of
Yeah,
speeds up,
sure.
slows down, and speeds up again. But I think
Mm.
that's why I think that happened.
Yeah.
8.8 for effects, which yes, for the most part, these are very very good.
Yeah, I don't I mean maybe there's stuff that you may have noticed that I didn't, but the special effects are done pretty well. I mean, I'm not
Nothing
sure
stood out
whether
to me. Nothing stood out in
yeah.
particular.
And of course, the Beep the Meep costume was great.
Meep's very impressive. The Roth Warriors are also very impressive.
Yeah.
Um,
Um yeah.
yeah, nothing else really stood out to me as
I
particularly
will say
horrific.
one thing. This is a smaller detail, and I think it's more to do with characterization. The Roth Warriors have an interesting thing going on with their voices
Yeah,
because they sound so human. There's
yeah, that's
no
true.
like in a lot of Doctor Who stories when you have scary the monsters, you would have some weird thing going on with their voices. You'd have
Yeah, Nicholas Briggs would be putting on a voice with some
yeah
modulation.
yeah some sort of filter with the voices, but there's none of that here, and I do wonder whether that's partly because RTD was trying to foreshadow that they're actually the protagonists. I'm not exactly sure if that was his intention, but
Maybe I don't
it's
know.
just interesting nonetheless. I don't know who it is who play the Roth Warriors, but I swear to God I've heard those voices before. One
All
of
right,
them in particular, I know
I'll look it up.
it's just in the back of my mind. You know what I mean? Like you just hear those
Yeah,
voices.
no,
And it's like
100%. Like,
I've heard
yeah.
this in like a dozen different British cartoons somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah, it wouldn't
and
surprise me.
yeah, and really good vocal performances as well. They're very compelling.
Yeah,
Um,
Miriam Margolyes is also really good as the
oh yeah,
Meep
no,
in this.
Miriam Margolyes is fantastic.
She's having
I love
so
it.
much fun.
She is. It's really quite great. So as we say,
Okay, so there's a couple
the
of different voices that are given
mm,
for uh, Wrath Warriors.
mm,
These might be actually puppets, but oh no, yeah. So Zogroth is Ned Porteous, and Zreeg is John Hopkinson.
I don't know either of those names, but I know I've heard those voices somewhere before. So that's not terribly surprising, and they do a really good job with it.
Yeah.
Um, I also will say they kind of help with this sort of slightly over the top campy tone of the whole story.
Mm.
Now, I watched this with my parents, and my dad actually said, "Oh, it seems a little bit, I don't know. I think he said it seemed a little bit over the top, almost silly with the tone." But I said to him, "I'm sorry, like, what Doctor Who have you been watching? Like, Doctor Who has always had a campy tone to it. Like,
100%,
come on,
yeah.
man. Especially with RTD's era. I specifically said to him
Mm.
that in the RTD era, the RTD one, goodness gracious,
Yeah.
he emphasized the campiness to, I think, actually a pretty good degree.
Mm.
In good ways. As I've said before, he sort of found his feet in sort of how to deploy it, but it was the campiness was there from the beginning. So,
Yeah.
and I think it's that element is actually used pretty well for what it is in this story. It's, good fun.
Yeah.
Anyway,
7.4 for replay.
um,
Well, you
look,
yourself said that you found better things the second time
yeah,
through.
look. To be fair, I want to say in one way that is, I mean, I do think generally that is too high, but um, and the bad problems I had with the writing, they didn't. I don't think they improved
Got it.
too much with multiple viewings, but the good stuff that I liked about it did get better. And again, it did open my eyes to some of the things I wasn't paying as much attention to. So I want to say that's too high, but I understand why people would say it, because for me personally, yeah, it did. But yeah, it got better on a rewatch. So
Sure. And 67 out of 83 people say this story requires a previous. I mean, yes, 100%. Like,
yeah,
you need to have a knowledge of the Dr. Donna to really appreciate this story.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
like, I know that he's really tried, Russell, to write this sort of knowing that there would be people who would be coming back to the show after not being around for the last few years. Um,
sure.
and he's also like really tried his best to get people up to speed in a lot of different ways. If it is their first exposure to the show,
Mm,
like there's a big opening narration bit with the Doctor and Donna. There's a couple of scenes where the Doctor lays it out, especially to the unit scientist.
mm.
He's done his best to really try and like educate the newcomers, but there's still so much in this that I'm like, you need to have seen the show before.
Yeah, well, and that's kind of the frustrating part because that's true. I think to really understand the dynamic of and the concept really of the Doctor Donna, yeah, it would be a lot more helpful if you'd seen Journey's End. But I think, in a way, some of his attempts to sort of bring the audience up to speed, he's kind of going too far in some ways. There's a lot of exposition in this story, and in some ways you can understand that to sort of
Yeah,
bring the audience up to speed, not just with the Journey's End thing, but also, what's happened with Donna in the meantime. But
yeah.
there are a number of moments where it's too much. I think I was sitting there and thinking, why is this dialogue happening? There are other moments where this gets explained, and even if we didn't have those moments, surely there are more nuanced ways RTD could weave this into the dialogue, or could even show it, I suppose. So I'm not, yeah,
I didn't mind those as much because
mm,
like I said, it is a lot of those scenes aren't just there for exposition purposes. Like the main one I'm thinking of is when he's talking to the unit scientist. Like yes, he is telling the story of Donna, but he's also like expressing like uh why is this happening? Like he's actually like they're shining a light on there's the coincidence is happening again, and it can't just be like I don't believe in destiny, but something is coming for Donna. This is part of a bigger plan. So for me, like that's what I took away from those scenes more than just. And here's the story again.
Oh well, that's the interesting thing because that scene that you mentioned, that is one of the really good bits of sort of recapping. That was very good. I agree. But there are other moments where the some of the exposition just gets a bit too much, and I don't know. I suppose this is how we can lead into the story
Yeah, go for
right
it.
from the beginning. That exposition from the Doctor and Donna, I just didn't feel was really necessary, especially in context with the rest of the episode, because we've already got that scene between the Doctor and Shirley where the Doctor's explaining this. That scene's good, but this
Mm.
opening scene, it's literally them just explaining it to camera, and I just think, like, what are we doing there? I don't really understand why there has to be there, why this sort of thing couldn't have been deftly woven into the storytelling and the dialogue, which again it kind of already is. So it just seems superfluous to me. Um, yeah.
For me, that's a big tone setter. I think like it's um
I guess I mm,
because otherwise, what would you open the episode with? Right? It would be the meek
I
crashing the ship, or the Doctor arriving and seeing Donna. Like, what would you open the episode
I
with?
I I would open it. I honestly I would prefer to open it to see to be with Donna and her family. I want to see, almost like a day in the life sort of thing. I want to see those characterizations worked on more. That's like for me, that's
Sure.
what I would have, I mean, replaced with, I
Yeah, I
suppose.
suppose. I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, it just doesn't. Again, you understand why he's doing it.
Mm.
Not least of all because again, there probably is a bit of nervousness coming back here because you
Mm.
know it's the 60th.
Yeah.
He's coming. RTD's coming back to Doctor Who,
He's
and
going
as
for
you
some kind
say,
of he's going for a big spectacle thing up top to sort of like
yeah, as you say, he probably was trying to make a concerted effort to set the tone, as you
yeah.
say, and that dialogue does in a way, but for me, it just felt
Yeah.
too superfluous.
Well, because I think there'd be like some kind of because these are the 60th anniversary specials.
Mm,
So I think if you open it up as if it was just a regular episode, it wouldn't quite feel right as like a celebration. But you open it
mm,
up literally with the face of a previous Doctor, like surrounded by this like really rather good looking nebula. I
mm,
think it does a little bit more to be like, okay, no, this is something. What's about to happen across these next three episodes is something special and is worthy of
mm.
commemorating the anniversary of the show.
I,
It
I,
maybe
I mm,
maybe a lot of the dialogue in that section like could have been worked on a bit because a lot of it is very explainy, but a lot of it
yeah,
is kind of like catching us up on Donna a little bit. Like she has moments of like we get in that scene where it's like I still feel like something's missing. I've got this family. I've got this daughter. Like a lot of this is stuff that is brought up in the episode as well. But it is good to hit the ground running with it early because that way when they show up, we get like a little less of who's this? Who are you?
I suppose so. But I think for me, in a way, if it was treated more like sort of an average Doctor Who episode, for me that would be more effective here. Again, I understand why RTD's doing it because it is the 60th, but it does for me impact the caliber of the storytelling, and
Sure.
I just want more nuance here and for
Mhm.
things to sort of slow down in a way. So yeah, I understand what you mean, but yeah, for me that even from the beginning there were some troubles there. Mm,
Well, talking at the beginning of the episode, what do you think of the
sure.
new title sequence?
Yeah, that was pretty neat. I think when
Yeah.
I first saw it, the very ending with the chorus, that threw me a little bit, but then I remembered, I mean, come on, Nick, it's Doctor Who, it's over the top, and it's not as if
Mm.
they haven't used choruses before, because even if you go back to the Seventh Doctor era, they used all that synthesizer music that sounds like
Yeah.
orchestral
And there's a
music.
lot more
But
synth in this version of the opening titles than there was in the live orchestra version
oh
that we
yeah,
got
no,
a
for
while
sure.
back.
I was listening to it. It's like okay, standard instrumentation, but then the synthesizer came in and thought, yeah, okay, here it is, man.
Mm.
This
And
is this is what we paid for.
the visuals are really good as well. Like it all looks really good, and
Yeah.
it's way more kinetic than other sequences we've seen. Where like they're cutting to
Oh, for
different
sure.
angles during the sequence, where normally it would just be a one shot. This time
Yeah,
they're cutting around a little bit, like they're focusing on different parts of the
yeah.
TARDIS. And for me, the fact that they haven't like specifically gone for a more nostalgic version of the title sequence, like they haven't tried to replicate a previous title sequence. They haven't really gone for uh, updating a previous version. That tells me this is likely the title sequence we're going to get for the 15th Doctor as well.
Yeah. No, and I would believe that. I don't think like because there's so much effort put into it, because as you say, there's a lot of dynamics to it.
Mm.
Very interestingly directed. There's that I actually really love the weird little quick zoom on the TARDIS because that's
Mm.
been done in the show, but not theme song. So I think, given how much effort has been put into it, I would be surprised if that doesn't continue with
They've also got some big
with the
zoom out
15th Doctor.
shots as well, like of the
Mm,
like massive like clouds of ethereal stuff with the names
mm.
coming through the TARDIS is like way off in the distance. I really like it.
Yeah, as you say, there's a lot of effort and detail put into it, more so than with most other
Mm.
um, theme songs. I will
While
actually
we're sorry, you go.
I will actually say though, just on the point of exposition, the bit where the Doctor is talking to Shirley about the backstory, again, that's good, but I think what you could have even done, and maybe this might have been a little bit too, I don't know, nostalgic, I guess, but you could have done that classic thing that they've done with Doctor Who, where you overlay the theme image of the theme song with a montage of um shots from previous episodes, and that way you
Yeah.
could have taken care of it. If they did that, that I think would have been better, and it would have been a lot clearer because again, you've got the visuals
Well, we get that in
from
the
Journey's
openings.
End.
We get that in the opening sequence, right? Like they flash back to Journey's End and they flash back to a lot of
Yeah,
Donna's previous adventures. Like we get that
yeah,
throughout
we
the
we
opening
do,
monologue,
we
don't we?
do. I think just uh again, like if only they took that part and then took the good dialogue between the Doctor and Shirley and just put them together, and then they could have
Mm.
potentially gotten rid of that first opening dialogue. But still,
Um, Really
yeah.
quickly, while we're on the topic of the
Mm.
new stuff, like updated versions of things,
Mm.
we have a new sonic screwdriver, and I want to touch on this very, very quickly because
Yeah.
it's a really interesting design, but also like
Mm.
it's doing a lot of really new stuff. Like it's
Yeah.
making like screens in the air and like
Mm.
holographic shields.
Mm.
What do we think about that?
Well, yeah, it's pretty cool, and it's very interesting. Like you mentioned the shield bit, because when we looked at the trailer, there's that one shot that I
Yeah,
highlighted where it looks like the Doctor's literally stopping a bullet with his bare hand, and I'm like, is that some post regeneration energy? But no, it's the shield. They just digitally removed it from the trailer, as far as I can tell.
yeah.
Perhaps to not give anything away, but it's interesting how it actually turned out. So, yeah, obviously this is something new. It can create shields. In a way, it's kind of a good contrast for what the sonic screwdriver has traditionally done, because normally the sonic screwdriver is about opening doors and breaking down barriers, but here it's creating barriers. I don't know if there's
Yeah.
any sort of deliberate meta thing RTD's going for there, but that's just kind of an interesting thought, I
I
suppose.
do wonder if this is, I do wonder if this is going to become like a regular feature of the
Mm,
Sonic, because it definitely seems like it's still like you can't just like conjure a shield out of nothing. It requires a lot of time to set up,
yeah,
so it's not going to be very useful in most covering fire situations.
yeah,
Um, but also, and I think this is the more interesting thing to talk about. New
mm,
TARDIS interior.
yeah. I love it.
I
Oh, I
think
love
it's
it.
fantastic. I think
It's
it's so good.
great.
It's the
It,
perfect melding of the old with the new.
yeah,
Like
I
it's
I
got the
totally
round
agree.
things along the walls. It's got the space. It's got like the internal like the all the ramps like give it just enough of a busy factor while still being incredibly simplistic. I
Yeah,
like that the colors change when the TARDIS is in flight.
yeah.
This might potentially be like the best TARDIS interior we've ever gotten.
Yeah. Honestly, even as a fan of Classic Who, I'm not against saying that, because I
Like
think,
that
as you
there might be some recency bias coming in there, but like it's
still,
just really clean.
yeah, it's as you say, it is combining the best of the old and the new, because, well, one, it's massive. It's genuinely, bigger on the inside than it is on the outside, even more
Yeah,
so than previous versions. So it's
huge.
taking advantage of, I assume, a bigger budget, better set design, quite a modern set design, and sort of, the fact that the revival TARDIS interiors are bigger than the classic TARDIS interiors. So it's taking that, but it's taking that classic
Yeah.
interior TARDIS design look and just expanding it. Basically, it really is the best of old and new. So
Mm.
I honestly, I know obviously it's a bit of a maybe too early to call, but yeah, I think honestly this could be the best TARDIS interior in the show.
And again, I really hope this sticks around for the 15th Doctor because it
Oh
would be
yeah, me
such a
too.
shame to build up this massive set and then break it all down and redo it
Yeah,
for Shooty. I think that I really
I
want this TARDIS to stick around.
I think they will, because again, like, they've devoted a lot of time to it, and there's these sort of dynamic camera moves of the Doctor going crazy, running around in the TARDIS, and it's such a
Yeah.
a great design. I would be astonished if they dismantled it and replaced it with something else. So yeah,
Mm.
there's that.
Um.
Hmm.
So we've covered a lot of the updated returning features.
Mm-hmm.
Let's discuss the episode properly now.
Sure, sure.
Um, I think that one of the best things that this episode does is just like give Tennant and Tate stuff to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're like I said, they've hit the ground running. It's almost like they've picked up exactly where they left off in terms of their acting and in their like
Mm-hmm.
characterization of these
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also like getting this like for however long we get it, this like slice of life into what
Mm-hmm.
Donna's life is like now,
Mm-hmm.
and how she's very fulfilled with what she has, but
Mm.
she still feels like there's something missing. She has that conversation with Sylvia where it's like every now and then I'll sort of look to my side and something won't be there.
Yeah.
That conversation I think was really strong.
Mm-hmm. I think the conversation itself was pretty strong. Again, I just wish it was in context without that opening, because again, it's kind of that dialogue is good enough.
Yeah, sure.
Like they put it in the trailer for a reason. It's doing quite a lot.
Mm.
So anyway,
But the other thing I
yeah.
think, like one of my big strengths of this episode is like it portrays these people as like real people,
Yeah.
and when they do that, it's incredibly strong. One of my favorite scenes in the entire episode, and it sounds weird to say this, but it's the bit where Sylvia, for a moment, uses the wrong gender to refer to Rose.
Yeah. I thought that was actually one of my favorite scenes in the way that was handled,
Yeah, because
because
it's so real. Like
yes,
you can
that was
really
such
get
a
the sense that
human moment.
yeah, and like you really get the sense that Sylvia's trying. She's like being very like she understands, but only like a little bit.
Yeah.
And so when she calls Rose gorgeous, she thinks, "Well, hang on, I never used to do it before. Is that sexism coming through?" And then
Mm.
briefly misgenders her, and then says, "Oh wait, no," and catches herself on it, and then says, "Sorry." Like
Yeah.
that is so real.
It's
And
great.
God, it's so amazing to see nuance in the show again.
Love it. Yeah. Honestly, okay. I was wondering when to bring this up, but I'll do it now. So, essentially, the family drama stuff, that's when this episode gets really great.
Yeah.
I love those little scenes when these characters are interacting. I think it's fantastic.
Hmm.
And that's what I wish the story was mostly.
Right.
I am honestly getting to the point now, and we'll get into this in more detail. I really do not give a damn about Beep the Meep and the Roth Warriors. The
Wow.
family drama, that's what I want. Like when I watch those scenes, when you see the scene where Donna comforts Rose after she gets dead named and misgendered, and then, as you say, the scene where Donna corrects Sylvia when she misgenders Rose, I'm like, that's the real drama, man. Why aren't we
Mm.
focusing on this? This is great stuff. There's that great bit in that conversation between Donna and Sylvia when um Donna doesn't say anything. She just gives Sylvia a look, and I thought, this is great. It's
Mm.
doing more with less. It's showing without telling. It's taking a really nuanced approach, and it's allowing the performances to really shine through. Catherine Tate in particular, I love it. I'm thinking this is what we should be focusing on here, people. Like, why are we wasting time with this incredibly generic alien invasion story? We've got real drama that we're dealing with here. I wanted more of it. I wanted more family drama. I wanted more Rose. I wanted more Donald, just all of that. I wanted more of it. So anyway, um,
It's fascinating as well. Like
yeah,
as I was watching this, I was thinking like this is like the most that Sylvia's ever gotten to do in one of these episodes. Like she had a she had a semi big focus throughout series 4, but
mm,
I never really felt like she did anything. Like she was just there to
yeah,
be
sure,
the overbearing mother, the one who
mm,
like wasn't really understanding of what Donna was going through and sort of
yeah,
like wasn't really supporting any of her decisions.
mm,
And we get shades of that here, but like you can tell that like she's really made a concerted effort to like keep Donna alive
for sure,
these
yeah, for
last
sure,
few years.
yeah,
Um, and she's still and like moments of that old character seep in every now and then, like when
yeah,
Donna sets her up to be like, don't you like relate to this feeling of motherhood where you look at your daughter and you think, wow, she's amazing, and then like just lets the moment hang there, and Sylvia has to go, oh yes, of
yeah,
course.
yeah,
That's like perfectly in line with where those characters were, but you can really tell that Sylvia's like progressed as a character still from those
sure, for
days.
sure,
She's taken the doctor's words to heart, like when the doctor said to her in the past, like, if you think she's like a really special person, try telling her that.
Mm,
Um, and yeah, like we get like more of Sean in this as well, like Donna's
mm,
husband, who like
mhm.
is just like a like he has his moments of like comic relief throughout the story, and that's really all he
Yeah, yeah.
does, and he does those pretty well.
Mm,
Um, but I get what you mean, like what, but I think that the story does a better job of like melding the family drama with the invasion than you give it credit for. Like it's not
mhm,
there the whole time, and I think it could have been integrated a bit more. Like maybe Donna at times could have like actually like really like gone off and like so like stop trying to like what is going on. You all clearly know like why you like trying to keep me in the dark about all this. Maybe like that element could
mm,
have been emphasized a bit
mm,
more to make the invasion seem more important than
mhm,
beyond just a regular invasion.
mhm.
But I think for the most part, it does a fine enough job like combining the two storylines together.
I I don't at this point. I don't think I can agree with you. I feel like I'm reminded honestly of something that you pointed out with Aliens of London World War Three, where you pointed out that there was family drama happening in that story as well, but it kind of got dropped, and then they just went for the more invasion story with some political
Yeah,
overtones. Um, but for me, it seems even more indecisive this episode. It feels like RTD isn't quite sure which one he wants to focus on,
right.
and because he can't figure out which one, the story suffers for it. The
Get that.
characterizations of um the main cast, they're good, and they're better than, certainly better than than I think the villains. But I want more of it. I want more detail. I want a bit more nuance and just more focus. Again, I because there is such a lack of nuance, especially with the villains. I am getting to the point where I'm like, I could easily do without the alien invasion stuff. If the main antagonistic force is just the meta crisis, and the other stuff is just the family drama, I'd be satisfied with that, if I'm
You
entirely
do
honest.
need you do need the alien invasion to bring up the meta crisis stuff, though.
I
Like it
mean,
can't just
yeah, I
happen for no
guess, but
reason. And the more it happens around the noble family, the more danger there is of the meta crisis stuff coming out. Which for me is where the episode does a really good job of like melding the two. Because like
I
there's throughout the episode, that Donna like starts to act more and more like her old self subconsciously. She calls him the doctor at one point, even though no one calls him that.
mm,
Um,
which is
and the
true.
fact that like it's like her entire like her house like being the center of this thing is not maybe not as it's not like as on the nose, but like it was a clear thing of being like this is like what could potentially happen
Yeah,
to
no,
Donna
no,
if
no,
it doesn't get
for sure.
resolved.
And I think for me, it's just, especially given the characterizations we get for the Roth Warriors and Beep the Meep, I just think there has got to be another way we can integrate the meta crisis into this. There's so much time um that's being wasted on sort of Beep the Meep and the Roth Warriors, given how, again, I feel how sort of surface level their characterizations are. I just think there's got to be a better way of doing this. I don't
I
exactly know how to do it. I don't know
hmm,
exactly how you would integrate the meta crisis otherwise, because you have to bring it back. You have to
yeah.
address it. There's no way that you can't.
I
But I
wonder
just
if
mhm.
sorry, I wonder if
Yeah, no, no,
that's
go ahead.
because I wonder if that's because we knew that the Meep was a bad guy from the beginning.
Look, I want to say that that's true, because I mean, there'd been rumors circulating that
Hmm.
the Meep was going to be secretly a bad guy because,
Well, that's just the way that their character has been
yeah,
characterized in the past. That's the way it works.
yeah, for sure. But honestly, for me, it's not just that, because I mean, granted, I actually prefer the Meep when the Meep is pretending to be the good guy. There's just a bit more nuance there. When the Meep becomes the villain, the vast majority of that nuance gets dropped. But for me, apart from the fact that I think the strength of any good sort of twist is that it should still hold up, even if you kind of know what it is going into it.
Hmm.
Apart from that, there's just so little there for me that I
Right.
can't, like, again, like, well, let me ask you this:
Yeah.
beyond beyond the roles that they're playing, being twist protagonist for the Roth Warriors and twist villain for the Meep, um, like, who are they? I don't like, and also apart from the backstory that we're given again through exposition, which is a little
Mm.
again unfortunate. I just on principle prefer that sort of thing to be shown rather than told. But apart from that, like, who are they? I don't get a lot of character from them. Um, and given that it just again, it's just taking up screen time that could be spent, developing this family dynamic even more. So
Well,
again,
again, true, but like I don't think this is like I said. I don't think this is any different than any other First Doctor invasion story we've ever gotten in the past. Because you could say the same thing for the Autons in Eccleston's first episode. You can say the same thing
yeah,
for Prisoner Zero in Eleven's first episode. You can say the same thing for the Clockwork Androids in 12's first episode, or Tim Shaw in 13's first episode. Like this isn't a new thing for Doctor Who to like give less attention to the villains, even though they play a role in getting the story going and focusing more on
well,
the characters.
I suppose, but for me, it's kind of again, it's the fact that it's so middling that they're like, okay, how can I explain this? The the
Is it, is
the
it is it the fact that they've tried to like throw a twist in with Meep and give the Meep a lot of focus, and like if it had just been like a standard alien invasion, they wouldn't have had to give that focus there and put it more
Yes.
on their.
Yeah, it's the indecision. It's not the fact that there's too little attention given to Beep the Meep. It's the fact that it's too in the middle.
Got
If you compare this to the other, season openers, I mean, I won't comment too much on the Moffat stuff because that's a whole other thing with me. And as I've often said, my viewing of the Moffat era is patchy. But certainly comparing it to Rose, um, yes, the presence of the Autons is smaller than Beep the Meep and the Wrath Warriors, but that is why it works. Like it again, they just can't. RTD doesn't seem to be able to decide how
Mm.
much attention he wants to give this, and
See,
because of that,
I don't
I
know
feel
because
like I feel like they're trying to give some interesting characterization, but they're just not. And I think if they were going to make it work, they would need to minimize their presence
no, see,
more
no,
or have
I
their own episode.
I just don't agree because for me it
Mm.
just comes back to you need to put the Noble family right in the middle of the story in order for the Meta Crisis stuff to properly unveil itself, and that's why the Meep is in their house, and that's why the Wrath Warriors ambushed them, and that's why the Meep
Which is
captures them, and
true, but
like
I just
it can't
I'm
just be a standard invasion. They can't just be onlookers. They have to be right there in the center of it all, and in
I'm
order to do that, you
mhm,
have to give them slightly more focus and you do this
mm,
ET kind of thing at the beginning where it's like, oh, we have to help the Meep because they've shown up here and they need help. But then, as it turns out, they're evil, and oh no! And now we've been captured by Meep because we trusted him so
mm.
much, and now we're right in the center of this, and
Yeah, 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 yeah.
we've been taken to this thing, and the Doctor's gone off to try and solve it, and Donna's run off after him. Like it, I think it's doing a better job than you're giving it credit for
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
pushing forward the Meta Crisis story.
Yeah.
Because again, like if this was Rose, for example, and
Mm,
the Noble family were just sort of like in a shopping center
mhm.
when the Autons attack, it doesn't do the same thing.
Yeah, like as you say, would be a bit too convenient. And the thing is, the sort of some convenience, it is there, like when, Donna just doesn't happen to see the spaceship crashing, but that
Yeah,
works in context because again, it's all about, Destiny heading for Donna Noble, so that
yeah, and
does
it's
kind of make sense.
perfectly in line with Donna's obliviousness
Yeah.
to the past and how they happened to miss everything. Like they missed Canary Wharf, they missed the Aliens of London thing happened, they missed
Mm.
Christmas.
Yeah, I do think I see what you mean in terms of like how to get the plot from, A to B. There would have to be something there that sort of draws sort of everything in.
Yeah,
But I think for me, I think the real disappointment is because there's so um again, it's that weird middle point where there's like not enough attention, but also too much attention given to Beat the Meep and the Wrath Warriors. I think for me, it's the missed opportunity of good characterization with them, and I
right.
think this is, as I say, this is why I say I'm having Chibnall flashbacks because
Well,
for me, they feel the characterizations themselves. I'm not talking about how they fit into the plot, but the characters themselves,
sure.
they feel surface level to the point where I'm like, why are we doing this?
Well,
Why?
maybe that's like well, these are
Mm,
like characters that already exist in the Doctor Who universe, right? So it's
Yeah,
entirely possible that this is incredibly consistent with how the Meep is
that's true.
characterized in comics, like, and
Yeah,
you can't switch things around too much because then they become unfaithful to the original source material. And
I suppose.
it's
Yeah,
clear that was a big goal of Russell because he's credited the original comic writers
yeah, for
in the title
sure.
of the episode, which is really good to see. Incidentally, like you don't get that enough
Yeah,
in any
yeah,
fiction, like actually crediting the original creators.
yeah. Because there's a lot of sort of Doctor Who's universe is so big, it just sort of it's borrowing from all these different places, for sure. But I think for me, like, if that's the case, though, like, even if the Beep the Meep and the Roth Warriors weren't written with a lot of detailed characterization in the original, I still just don't understand why um RTD went with that idea. I mean, okay, like I know what you mean when you say that they have to help sort of get the story going, but I cannot believe that RTD couldn't have come up with some other way to do it. I realize I know that I'm being a bit vague by not saying exactly how it could have worked,
Hmm.
but I feel like there would have to have been another way to do it, and I think especially given that we've got such great characterization with the family dynamics, which I want more of. I honestly, I wish in a way that RTD. I mean, again, I can't obviously read his mind. I don't know the man personally, but it almost feels like he's included this invasion story, especially given it's drawn from previous sort of extended universe stuff, almost as a way to placate fans. It's almost like he's saying,
Hmm.
"Don't worry, guys, this is the same Doctor Who. We've got
Well,
wacky sci-fi adventures." But I honestly, there's part of me that wishes he just stuck to his guns and just mainly focused on the family and had the meta crisis as the big sort of antagonistic force. Again, as to how he would have incorporated that into the plot, I don't have any specific solutions to it, but
here's the
I
thing.
I have to believe that he could have done it in some way.
Well, here's the thing. Like, for one thing, we keep saying an invasion story. The Meep isn't trying to invade. They're trying to
No.
trade. They're trying to get away from the Roth Warriors. That's all the Meep
Yeah.
wants to do. And at that point, the goals are simplistic, and they can be simplistic for those purposes because it's not
Mm.
about like conquering or invading or anything like that. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
literally
Yeah.
about I need to flee.
Yeah.
But also it comes back to the 60th anniversary thing, right? Like, if he's going to include a way to get the meta crisis thing happening, he might as well bring back a character or a species from extended material to celebrate the legacy of the show, right? And and again, I've just done a skim of the TARDIS wiki.
Sure.
The characterization of Beep the Meep, as we see in this episode, seems incredibly consistent with the way
Sure.
the Meep has been
Sure.
characterized in the past. So at
Yeah.
that point, he's nailed it. On top of that, I don't think you're giving enough credit to how like fun the Meep is to watch while they're being villainous. Like, if you're going to do just a big like cackling villain, you might as well make it be something that looks really cute and cuddly initially, because there is a layer of fun that can come from the dichotomy of that. And also, like, there are like plenty of examples of like scheming, like, Mr. Burns hands together style of
Mm.
villains in the
Mm.
show's past. Like, not every villain has to be this this really like layered and nuanced character. Sometimes they can just be
Mm.
evil for the sake of getting a story going to get our characters
Yeah.
involved
Yeah.
in the action. And on that
Yeah.
level, I think Russell nailed it. At
Mm.
which point, like, he hasn't really failed to give the character more nuance than that, because that's exactly what he was going for.
Mm. Yeah, I do see what you mean, and I think to be fair, like even if you look at Doctor Who history, yeah, as you say, it's not like every villain has the most nuanced representation.
Yeah.
There are plenty of villains that are there to be, bad guy.
Yeah.
But I think even in those cases, even in the classic story, it's not great when they happen either. And I'll admit there may be a bit of bias here. If this characterization was part of a classic series, a classic series episode, I do wonder, would I be as harsh with it? I want to believe I would be, but I
Hmm.
can't like ultimately say that because this isn't a classic story.
Yeah.
And
Well,
as you
another
say,
thing
like
is like,
oh, sorry, no, go ahead.
sorry, I the first time I watched this through, I did have a similar moment with
Yeah,
you when they were explaining why the meat was evil, and
yeah,
they described like, oh, the entire species was like
yeah. I
made
wondered
mad
how
by
you would
this thing.
react to that
And
because you
well,
wouldn't.
again initially I was like, okay, so now that this isn't like one person in the species being allowed some kind of free will and
Yeah,
just being evil because that's who they are. No, the entirety of meat kind was driven mad by
yeah.
psychosis. but then looking into it, that is the backstory from the comic as well. So again, you
Yeah.
can't alter that too much either.
Yeah.
So like he's working with what he's got, and if he changes things too much, you're gonna have people upset. Where it's like, oh, you've changed everything about the character, so why would you use him in the first place, right? Like
Yeah.
it's the exact thing that you're criticizing the meat for, but on the other end.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, I think, yeah, I just, I think when I'm watching it, I'm just seeing sort of the missed opportunities. If it was, even if it was a whole separate episode, it could have worked. But because it's in that middling point, it definitely lacked impact for me. And again, granted, maybe I'm still recovering from
Maybe.
the Chibnall era, but when I hear like there's that one bit of dialogue, and I'm gonna get this up now because I took it down in the notes. It's when the Meep says, "No stun guns for me, just die." I'm like, come on, man. What are
Again,
we
I don't think
doing?
I didn't think that was that bad because again,
Mm,
it's like it's portraying because that line happens almost immediately after the meep turns, right? So again, it's like the
yeah, yeah.
contrast between the cute character they were trying to be and then the really like
Yeah,
directly vicious nature that the character
I
actually
suppose
is.
so. I suppose so. And then like I think it was also other moments when the Meep is in the rocket ship and they're saying like hail to the Meep. They keep repeating these phrases, and I'm like, well, when you're repeating dialogue like that, is it speaking to a lot of layers with this character? I'm not sure. So I think,
It's been like a
look,
certain like pompous and like self-assuredly proud nature of the character,
I
right?
I guess, but I get I look
I think you've been burned too badly in the past by like
look that might be part of it. I'm still recovering from.
maybe. Look, for me,
Mm,
my thing is like you've been talking about like the middling nature of like the way that this story is contrasted with
yeah,
the human stuff. My
yeah,
thinking is if you put the meep in any other story, it would pretty much be the exact same.
yeah,
So
maybe.
in that case, it's like,
Mm.
well, if we were going to get it, we might as well get it here.
And I suppose maybe it is just the contrast because again, like the family drama. I want more of it, and the bits
Hmm.
where it's good, I'm like, oh, this is so good. Why aren't we focusing on this? And then just to go back to this super generic, uh, evil alien story, I just think it's a whiplash for me, Cuff. I
Sure,
think,
I guess.
yeah, I want it.
And for me, it's like the really really good character stuff is like bolstered by a simple alien story because
Yeah,
if you make both too complicated, then it just becomes busy.
yeah, which is true. I just wish again if. And look, I don't envy RTD's task here because
Yeah.
I think the putting in a sort of generic, evil alien story, that makes sense. Because again, I think he's probably saying something like, don't worry, guys, this is still Doctor Who, we've got wacky alien antics.
Yeah.
And it's understandable. And I don't, as I say, I don't envy his position there. That's tough. But I just, given given the caliber of some of RTD's writing, I just wanted more narrative cohesion. I think.
Well,
Um, yeah,
I don't want to like lead the witness. I've been doing quite a lot of like defending here.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but like, and I this is a really poor argument, and I don't like using it in general.
Mhm.
But this story isn't over yet.
That's true. I
Like,
think.
there's every chance that when
Mm,
we get to like the toy maker stuff, clearly the toy maker's involved.
yeah, oh, yeah, for
The
sure.
me refer to a boss.
That's
I
got to be
did
the toy maker. I can't imagine.
I did see a really funny thumbnail of one of those like Easter eggs you may have missed in the Star Beast, where it had that clip and like the words "the boss," and then it pointed to an arrow with Shooty Gatwa's face. And I was like, well, okay, that's clearly thumbnail bait. No one, I don't think that
Yeah,
the show is insinuating that the boss is the 15th Doctor.
yeah.
No,
Hmm.
but like the toy maker is clearly involved, and maybe when we find out to the extent of it,
Mm,
it might recontextualize a lot of this
sure.
stuff. Again, that's
Which
not a
is,
defense. I don't
yeah,
like using it in general because it was used to defend Timeless Child when that was happening,
yeah, yeah,
and it was like, well, no, because like this, the beginning of the story still has to be good. It
yeah. It
can't
has to
be
stand
like
on its own.
yeah, it's part of the reason why I think the people who say, oh no, like the prequel Star Wars films are good because of all the extra context that they get from like Clone Wars and the extended
Yeah,
media. It's like, well, no, they still have to stand on their own. On their own, they're not
yeah,
very good. So
yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, look, it's possible in context my opinions may change a little bit.
yeah,
I think for me though, I am focusing more on the fact that, I want this story to stand on its own, and I'm not quite sure, particularly with the Meep and the Wrath Warrior stuff, whether it's gelling together.
sure. And
I
look, for all
will,
the defending I'm doing, I don't think it's perfect. Like, there's
yeah,
definitely
yeah,
things about it. Like, it is incredibly convenient that the Earth fixed itself as soon as the drill stopped drilling.
yeah. I wondered about that. Like it, mm,
Like
that
those
that,
massive, massive fiery cracks in the Earth, which
and then
also,
they just disappear.
yeah, and they also just so happen to follow along with the roads perfectly.
Yeah, I,
People definitely died. Like that's still definitely like those cracks will have opened up while there were cars on the road.
yeah,
So people still died during all that, but like
yeah.
the fact that they happened to get fixed immediately, I was like, okay, that seems a bit easy.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I understand what you mean, and as you say, it's like if this story was going to turn out a certain way, like it's like certainly the Wrath Warriors and the Beep the Meep stuff, it kind of had to be this way
Yeah,
anyway, if that makes sense. Like there was
yeah,
no, like, how else would you have incorporated it?
mm,
And I do appreciate that. I just think for me, I'm looking at those characterizations. I'm like, I want more here, and they're just sort of
mm.
kind of there, and I just
Well,
think there has to be another way to incorporate the meta crisis, and also to make it as sort of invasive, I suppose, on the lives of the noble
mm.
family.
Well,
Um,
at the very
hmm.
least, this episode opens things up for the meme to come back and get better
Yeah,
characterization.
yeah, yeah, that's true. That's
Because,
very
like,
true.
at the very least, this episode does a good job introducing the concept to the audience,
Yeah,
especially one that
and
hasn't heard of the meat from the extended media. I
and
do
I
think
will.
there is a part of that that is getting in the way because if you
Hmm.
haven't heard of the meat, then you don't, then you do get the thrill of again the contrast of seeing this
Yeah,
murderous
basically,
character as a Furby,
yeah,
basically.
basically going from Mogwai to Gremlin.
Exactly.
Um, So, and that's true. And I will actually say, in not in terms of maybe the deeper characterization, but in terms of the dialogue itself, it's actually not too bad.
Yeah.
There's, as I say, I wanted more depth, but it's clear that RTD knows how to write a fun villain, and he knows how to write a fun villain in a way that I think, for example, Chibnall, for the most part, just didn't.
No. Yeah.
There's a lot of like the dialogue itself has little sort of small details to it that do make it
Hmm.
um quite fun.
And you mentioned like
Um,
looking back at like a twist when you rewatch it, like
mm,
supposed to be it makes sense, but like it doesn't fall into the trap that a lot of like stuff that's similar to this does, where when you watch it back, it's like, hang on a minute, this dialogue makes no sense now. When the
yeah,
Wrath
yeah,
Warriors could have shot Fudge, the kid, and
mm,
then said, leave him, the Meep is who we're after. Like that
mm,
line still completely makes sense when you consider the actual characterizations of these characters.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
not like other villains in the past where like they've been portrayed one way and then they've actually been a different way. But when you look at it back, the dialogue makes no sense
yeah, for sure,
as
for
a
sure,
result. Like
yeah,
there's been thought put into that aspect of the characterization.
sure,
We've been talking a lot about the meta crisis. Let's talk about how it resolves.
yes,
Um, for me, a lot of this resolution is incredibly strong, and a lot of it is incredibly weak.
yeah. So, yes, I would agree. So I think, okay, so I'll put it this way: the
Yeah,
ending overall, in terms of pacing, like that whole last 10, 15
I,
minutes,
yeah,
it feels very rushed. Given how rushed the whole thing feels, actually no, I should probably step back. So there's basically two twists.
mm,
There's um the fact that the metacrisis has been genetically passed down to Rose,
yep,
and then there's the twist of how it actually gets resolved.
yes,
Given how rushed the whole ending feels, that first twist is handled, I think, really well. And
I agree.
even the bit where you see the montage of the different toys and how that all works
Yes,
in, Given
Yes.
how that could have just been a bit of nostalgia bait, that I'm really impressed how well that works.
No,
So like,
yeah, I am with you on that. Like
e-
that initial reveal is incredibly strong.
yeah, I think even on a first watch, which again, like that first watch, it wasn't the whole episode wasn't as strong for me as it was on the second
Yeah.
watch. Even then, when I saw all the toys with the sound effects, I kind of knew it was good because I got that nice warm fuzzy feeling you get
Yeah.
in those nostalgia scenes, but it didn't
And
feel cheap. I
it
didn't feel
also
robbed of anything.
yes, and it also perfectly answered the question that a lot of that friend of the show Sam Sweeting has had for a long time, which is
Mm.
why does this character have the name Rose?
Yes.
Well, it's because
Yep.
they were initially christened a different name, but when they were choosing a new name, Metacrisis stuff worked its way to the surface. I
Yeah.
have the name Rose somewhere in my head. That's what I'm going to name myself. Makes
Yep.
perfect sense.
Yeah, for sure. So again, I I would want, and this is kind of why I say I don't want, the Beat the Meat stuff in the Wrath Warriors, because I think the whole ending itself, I wanted it to be a bit more layered. Even that first twist, I wanted it to be woven a bit more maybe consistently or more subtly into the plot. But given that it is a bit rushed and that it sort of had to make room for all the Beat the Meat and Wrath Warrior stuff, it works like really well. Like I was
Yes,
very impressed how that first part works.
I agree.
So that's the first part.
Hmm.
I really, really don't like the second part.
Me
Like
neither.
that final twist. God,
Yeah, and
oh,
we gotta be really careful how we handle this part of the discussion
yes,
as
we
well
do.
because
We definitely
I
do for sure.
there's every likelihood we're going to come across as the exact kind of Doctor Who fans we've been
Yeah,
criticizing for the last 2 years.
yeah, absolutely. This is it's a very serious topic. It deserves
Mm. And
a lot of
I'll say this up front.
yep,
The intention and the message, fine.
yep. Oh no, absolutely.
No
Um,
problem with it. It fits in Doctor Who.
yep,
Like people, some like I saw someone say like on Facebook or something a while back, like in 1963, Doctor Who had the first female producer for the BBC. It's always
yep,
been political, so
yep,
shut up.
yeah, for
Fine with
sure.
that. But
Absolutely.
something can be political because it's good that it is, and also have a little bit of bad dialogue involved with it.
Yeah, I think as you say, the underlying message, and look, as and perhaps I should have mentioned this earlier. The
Yeah,
fact is, in regards to some of the themes in this story, our perspective is going to be limited. Limited.
100%.
Okay,
Yeah.
we're two straight guys. We just have that huge gap of lived experience. So anybody listening to this, please take everything we say with a grain of salt. Because we we just can't fully 100% know that perspective. So that
Yeah.
could easily be impacting our thoughts on this. Um, and it is a very important and serious topic. And honestly, I really admire the fact that RTD, not only looked at these themes but incorporated them in the way he did. Like the fact that he had the will to do that.
Yeah.
He deserves absolutely credit for doing so. So
It's also clear
good
that
for
he's
him.
not just like paying lip service to the whole thing for brownie
Yeah,
points.
he's
Like,
trying to actually put it as part of the plot.
yeah,
Which is true. And even so the underlying themes of that bit of dialogue, and like we know the one that we're talking about,
yeah,
um, where the actual meta crisis gets resolved. So the underlying themes of the I mean, I'm basing this partly off a post that friend of the show Sam Sweeting made, where she posted a screenshot from a Twitter user, I think her name's Lord Emily, saying like, and I'm not quoting this directly, but it said something to the effect of like, a lot of people may not understand how important this is for trans people to see this kind of great representation and to also have Rose's identity positively affirmed, which they do consistently throughout the episode, which is great.
yes,
So
yeah,
that's definitely a part of this ending. So that's
yeah,
one thematic element to that bit of dialogue.
yeah,
Another element that I interpret it as having is it's kind of trying to give a sense of empowerment for both Donna and Rose, and a sense of
yeah,
empowerment that they find from themselves, but also from each other. And that stuff, like the ideas there, great, fantastic. And I would love
yes,
it if it was sort of weaved into the plot in a more effective way. So my criticism of it, and I assume your criticism of it too, it's not the messaging. The messaging is
No.
great.
Yeah.
It's the execution that's the issue.
100%. Yeah.
This goes back to, I think, a little bit to what we said about the tribunal era.
Yeah.
The problems, certainly, that I have with the writing here, it's like, to put it simply, it's not bad because it's political. The writing elements that are bad, they're bad because they're bad writing elements, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Again, it's not the messaging. Messaging is fantastic. It's the execution
Yeah.
that I have a problem with. So, let's just sort of set the groundwork for what we're talking about here. We are
Yeah.
talking about the resolution of the meta crisis.
Yes.
Now, this is a very important story plot point.
Yes.
That is essentially 15 years in the making, right?
It is.
It was the absolute crux and pinnacle of Donna's character development in the in RTD1, and so it represents a really massive antagonistic force that's really serious. And
Yes.
because of that, in order to resolve it, you want to give it the most amount of time and attention you can. You
Yeah.
really need to carefully and deftly weave it into the plot so it feels satisfying. And as I said, those themes of empowerment, the theme of helping to affirm Rose's identity, those are great ideas. And if this is why I say we should have gotten rid of the Wrath Warriors and the Beat Them East stuff, because if you had more space, you would have been able to develop this stuff much more deftly. Like that idea of that sense of empowerment and the affirmation of Rose's identity, the idea of that resolving the meta crisis, that's a great idea. And if RTD took the time throughout this whole episode to work it in better, it could have been great. As it is, however, it's not. It is incredibly rushed,
Mm-hmm.
incredibly tacked on, and
Yeah.
incredibly forced. Again, a plot point that was 15 years in the making gets resolved in 5 seconds. Now, Cuff, I am sorry, and I cannot tell you how upset I am to have to say this. That, as far as I'm concerned, is just bad writing. That is a rookie mistake. And
Yeah.
I think, like, this is why I say that there are, and it's not just with this, it's with the other characterizations as well, with the Beep Them Eep and the Wrath Warriors, but I can't believe that RTD rushed that ending that much.
Well, it does that thing of like, I'm not sure how it's going to affect Joni's End on a rewatch from now on, but there might be something in the back of people's mind as they rewatch it going, so the Doctor wiped her memory when he could have just told her to let go of it all.
Exactly. So
And look, and there is enough stuff like to recontextualize it slightly, but it's not hearing the dialogue in this episode.
no,
If the
no, no,
episode
no,
had
no.
gone, if the episode had gone out of its way to say, I couldn't have done it on my own, but now
Mm.
that there's two of us, boom, done. And that
Yeah.
and Joni's had also established that a human with a Time Lord brain is capable of more things than a Time Lord on their own. Like Donna is able to affect the Daleks in that episode to a degree that the Doctor never would have thought of on his own. So like there again, there is enough precedent to set up this like idea of two human Time Lords are capable of letting go of it all, but
For
it's
sure.
not present in the dialogue that we get.
No, it's again, it's concept great.
Yeah,
Execution is really bad, and I
Yeah.
just again, I couldn't believe that was part of an RTD script. That, oh man, and for me, this is it's so painful because this for me is I think the worst part of the script, and it really, really lets it down. Not just because of how rushed it is, but because this is the ending, this is the climax, this is the resolution again of a plot point that's
Well-
15 years in the making.
Well, again, we don't know that yet. It might be. It might not be. Maybe it'll rear its ugly head again in the next couple of episodes. I don't know if. I don't think it will. But like again, there's every chance that this is like gonna come up again. Like the Toymaker's gonna be like, "You thought it was gone. It's not."
Yeah. Oh, I mean, yeah. To be fair, it could be anything. It's Doctor Who. Anything could happen. So yeah.
I don't have a problem with the fact that two of them could do it.
No, not at all. I think.
But if that was the idea that was communicated, then I would have had no problem with it. And
Yeah.
also, like, they clearly set up like this wasn't like they didn't know that having a kid would have passed the meta crisis stuff along. Like that
Yeah,
wasn't
for
something that was
sure.
brought up before. So again, it might as well happen here.
Yeah.
How do we feel about? I've seen this sentiment echoed online, and again, this
Mhm.
might be beyond our scope.
Sure.
But there are people that were complaining that Rose was simplified down to a plot device by the end of the episode, and that
Hmm.
idea was doing more harm than having her just be a character. I think that there's enough characterization of Rose early on that getting her involved in the story like this isn't a plot device, it's just part of her character.
Yeah, again, I'll, tread this ground cautiously,
Yeah.
but I can understand that criticism, but and in a way this kind of goes back to what I said. Like I honestly I wanted to see more of Rose. I wanted to see more of who she is as a character and more sort of family dynamics
Mm.
between her and the rest of her family. But I do think saying that she's just been reduced to a plot device, it is a bit. I think that is a bit simplistic of an
Me too. I
interpretation.
agree. Like
And
there's
mm,
she gets enough characterization up front that
yeah,
having her be involved, even if like she is like when you really boil it down, she
mm,
is only there to give Donna a daughter so that there can be two Time Lords. Like that's like but then like when you can simplify absolutely anything down to like a
yeah,
complete
yeah.
minute degree to
And
minimize
and,
that.
and and even then though, that does kind of help with characterization because
Yeah.
the idea of Rose not only having the ability but the will to take on the meta crisis and to use the new Time Lord knowledge to help save the day, that itself is good characterization and
Yeah.
seems completely in line with who she is. And I love the interaction, the first interaction she has with Beep the Meep. That's
Mm.
such a it was such a kind of a vulnerable human moment,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it also helped explain why Donna doesn't have the money anymore. Again, this sort of goes back to the issues I had with some of the expository dialogue, but this is kind of why, because in this scene we get a hint of what happened to the money. Uh, Rose says, I'm trying to sell these toys to make a bit of money for mum and dad.
Mm.
So it's doing all these great things at once.
Yeah.
So I think those things alone help with her characterization.
Yeah, definitely. I do think that the people who are
Yeah,
like saying that she's a plot device have like confused plot device with a character being involved in the plot.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I think it's possible to have a more charitable interpretation than the one these people are coming up with.
Yeah.
Um,
Um,
for
I don't know
sure.
if there's much more to discuss. I think we've made our feelings on this pretty clear. Um, Before we sign off on and like give a score for this episode, we do have to talk about Wilf.
There are a couple of things I also want to address, but yes, let's deal with Wilf first.
Sure. This scene is the scene where they talk about Wilf. I have no idea if this was written before or after he died. I know that
Mm,
he died during filming, so it's very possible that a lot of this stuff was added in because he was meant to be here and
yeah,
couldn't
sure.
be. Um, but I love how like the reverence they give to the character and how
Yeah,
like
it's kind of nice.
it's so sweet how they treat Wilf, and I
Mm,
love that Kate Stewart is the one that went, "No, we're going to take care of you." I
yeah,
knew I liked her. I knew there was a reason I liked her.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think that because there is that weird awkward moment where the doctor thinks that Wilf has passed away, but then it's like, no, he's at a like a retirement
Yeah,
home, and the fact that you've got Kate Stewart, looking after him, yeah, there's something very, very sweet about that, and it's like the fact that it's Kate Stewart, who's also the Brigadier's daughter, that it all fits. There's that military history, so
yes,
obviously she would have that respect for Wilf.
yeah,
So the
definitely.
fact that RTD has come up with this great idea of combining the two characters, sort of, or having them sort of, meet, I suppose, in this way, is good.
Well,
Um,
especially because like he's never written for Kate before, but he's in one scene
mm,
without even using her, he's nailed her characterization. It's
yeah,
perfect.
yeah, I agree. Because you do, and it is kind of in a way indicative of not just Kate Stewart but also the Brigadier. Because with the
Mm,
Brigadier, even though he is a military man, there's no way of getting around that. But when
no,
you look at his characterization, especially as it progresses throughout the classic series, there's more of that warmth and camaraderie and kindness coming through. So the fact that that's been sort of passed down to Kate Stewart, and the fact that RTD knows that to tap into that is really really great. I think so. It was very sweet. I do hope we actually get to see him.
we will.
I
He's
um
been confirmed to appear. He's probably going to be in the final episode, I would assume.
yeah. So I'm very excited to see how that works. But given given that he's not
If
actually on screen, he's handled pretty
mm,
damn well.
well, I'll put it this way: if we weren't going to see Wilf, this episode would have ended with a in tribute to Bernard Cribbins.
That's true. Yeah, and
The
I
scene
actually
that the
looked at the
episode he appears in will have that tribute on it.
yeah, because I actually looked at the credits and like, yeah, they're gonna have a in tribute to Bernard Cribbins, but no, as you say, if that's gonna happen, it's gonna be an episode that he actually appears in. So
Yeah, and it gives me some confidence that they at least finished one of his scenes before he
yeah,
died.
that makes sense.
And I'm glad it was by all accounts, it seems like it's going to be his last scene or one of the last scenes of the specials.
Yeah.
Which I'm happy that they're going to sign off with him as opposed to having him in early and then disappears.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's good that it worked out that way, but
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know, it just makes it that scene like it makes like the future Wilf scene that we're going to get all the more special. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. Yeah, and I certainly agree. I'm quite excited for that, for
Yeah.
sure.
What were your other last things you wanted to
Yeah, so there are a
mention
couple of
before we
other
wrap up?
things. So I just want to go back to some characterization
Mhm.
issues. I Look, as I said, I don't envy RTD's job here. He has to do a lot of things, and not just because he feels compelled to bring in the Beep the Meep and Wrath Warrior stuff. There's there's so many things that he's trying to juggle here that it's impossible to give um everything all the attention that it could have been given, if that makes sense. So
Well,
there were some moments I feel like when the doctor is doing the weird kangaroo court,
mhm.
it almost felt like a bit too generic wacky traveler. Again, I can understand why he's doing that, because the fact is, RTD has to make room for the other characters. It can't be a super big introduction to this doctor, and not just because it's David Tennant playing him again. But I look at these characterizations and I think I want more nuance. I think so, and we do get quite a lot of nuance, but it's only in certain scenes, and it's when again those great family interactions are happening. So I just wish that was a bit more consistent. But again,
I don't
that
know.
that might be more of a nitpick, because I understand why RTD has had to make these choices.
I like the court scene. I think
Mm.
it plays up like the playfulness of the Doctor and like the
Yeah, I suppose
he's done
so.
this. He's had to do this kind of thing in the past, so of course he's got a wig ready. He's done it
Yeah,
so much. He wants to have a bit of fun with it. So throw a wig on, pretend it's court, invoke the Shadow Proclamation, which is a nice way of like
yeah, I guess
visual as opposed
so.
to
And to be fair, he didn't realize that Beep the Meep was a villain, and that the Beep the Meep was about to vaporize two people. So it's
well, he
not
didn't he
like,
didn't realize the Meep had a weapon. Certainly,
yeah, exactly. It's not like the Doctor could have read the room completely.
yeah,
So that, yeah, I guess that makes sense. As I say, it might be more of a nitpick on my end, but
sure,
yeah, so that works. Um, Another bit of praise I want to throw at this episode. There are certain scenes, like I know I've talked a lot about how there's a lot of exposition that I don't think really needs to be there,
yeah,
but there are some scenes of interactions that I actually really like. I actually love the weird bit where it's chaos in the noble household, where you've got
mm.
they're hiding Beep the Meep, and Sylvie's trying to hide Beep the Meep from Donna, and the doctor's at the front door, and she's getting all shitty, and then all this stuff is happening, and then Sean comes home, and here's the reason why I liked it. The tone is very interesting,
yeah,
because um it really, all of the elements, the performances, the direction, the editing, and it also certainly Murray Gold's score,
yeah,
they're all combining to make the tone perfectly balanced between sort of anxiety, like genuine anxiety, but also humor. And the
yes.
fact that has been able to orchestrate this in that way is really impressive, I think.
Mm.
Because that's
Mentioning
hard to
Murray Gold,
do.
yeah, and mentioning Murray Gold really quick. I love that we get a returning motif when the Doctor and Donna are back in full force. Like we get one of the old themes
Yeah,
come back
the
in, and I was
and
like,
then
oh, it's giving me the warm fuzzies. This is
yeah,
so good.
and then there's that one moment, I think, where it's revealed that Rose has inherited the
Yeah,
metacrisis, and
mm,
then there's like, I don't think they use a choral voice, but it's that the that bit that
mm, mm.
gets played again in a subtle way, which is really cool. Anyway, the point is, that's this weird scene where all this chaos is happening. I thought that was handled really well, and that was probably one of the biggest things for me where when I watched it a second time, I'm like, oh, actually, this is the stuff I wasn't paying attention to. This is actually really, really good. Again,
Yeah.
I wish it could have all gelled together with the plot a bit better because, again, we've got, Beat the Meat and Wrath Warriors, which I've already gone through. But the scene, like, on its own, it's good and really fun. And it felt like not just, pre-Chibnall Who, but, like, it felt
Mm.
like RTD's Doctor Who. Like, this
Yeah.
feels like a classic RTD scene, and it was really really
Well, yeah.
enjoyable
It
to do that.
to a lesser extent, it invoked the miming through through the windows bit with the Doctor and Donna when they first reunited.
Yeah, a
Like
little bit.
it's
I
not
mean,
the same tone at all, but it's a very similar like style of humor.
yeah, I'd agree. I think, and that's actually an interesting thing because after the first time watching it, like, come on, like the interactions between Donna and the Doctor. Can you name me anything that's as nuanced as the miming conversation
Mhm.
between them? But after watching it a second time, it's like, oh, actually, yeah, there is. It's
Yeah.
well, first it's that scene, but there's also other nuances with their interactions that are good too. So again, as I say, I'm really
Yeah.
glad I watched this multiple
And
times just to
yeah,
really appreciate that.
speaking of talking through the glass, I like that
Hmm.
conversation in the ship when the Doctor knows that he has to like in order to save London, he has to give Donna's memories back, and
Yeah,
he
that.
says to her, "Look, this will kill you," and she says,
Hmm.
"Okay, it's
Yeah,
me or 9 million people and my daughter."
yeah,
And then
for
she falls
sure.
back into her well of "I'm not special," and it clearly kills the Doctor to hear her say that because
Yeah,
it's exactly like
and
it
and
invokes the exact same heartbreak of why it was so painful to take Donna's memories in the first place because it
for
removed
sure.
all of
Yeah,
her positive affirmations that she'd gained over that season.
yeah, all of that character development. Yeah, and
Yeah,
I think that scene is one of the strongest scenes in the episode.
yeah,
Even when watching it the first time, that resonated with me.
yeah, and that
Um,
scene just made me so look forward so much to the next couple of episodes when we're going to
yeah,
really spotlight their dynamic now that it's
yeah.
back in full force.
And in a way, this kind of goes back to what I said. Yes, I want more from the characterizations overall. But again, as opposed to a Chibnall episode, you really get the feeling that RTD understands these characters to the core. And
Yes.
that scene, that really dramatic scene where the Doctor winds up saying, "Why does it have to be this?" You really feel it, and
Mm,
RTD definitely deserves kudos for that.
yeah.
Um, there's one little bit. The bit where the Doctor finally makes his way into the house and they're talking to Beep the Meep. Um, there's a couple little bits of dialogue that I want to highlight. One of them I
Hmm.
really like. It's when Donna says the really shitty thing where
Oh yeah, we can
we could
sell
sell Mad
Paddington.
Paddington for 1 million
Yeah,
quid. And I just thought, well, I really like that dialogue because yeah, it's really shitty, but it's very funny. It is quite nuanced. I mean, it's possible even Catherine Tate improvised that. It wouldn't surprise me.
maybe. Yeah,
But again, it feels definitely feels like Donna as a character. It's the
yeah,
snarkiness. It's the not selfishness, but kind of like the dismissiveness. It feels very authentic, which is really kind of great. Um, and then like the fact that everybody reacts to it in such a shocking way, it's like, yeah, Jesus, that's really shitty.
yeah.
Especially given that I don't know, was it right after Beep the Meep said that, oh yeah, that they're gonna take me back to their planet and kill me and harvest me for my fur? It's
I don't think. I think it was before then.
Yeah, fair enough. Still, it works. It's funny. But here's the one bit of dialogue that I wasn't crash hot on. It's when the Doctor says, "Oh, you're a fashion victim," and I'm like, really something the Doctor would say in such a critical moment because that seems like a really serious thing. Finding out that this creature who is in desperate need of help is possibly going to get taken away and skinned. I mean, that doesn't seem like a very doctory thing to say in that moment. That I mean, it's not quite as bad as some of the more unpleasant characterizations in Chibnall's era, but again, having some flashbacks. Now, with that said, I wonder whether that's deliberate. I wonder whether this is a signal that there's something about this Doctor that's a little bit different, maybe even a little bit off. I don't
I
know
I don't
how.
think it's. I don't think we should be reading into it that way. I
Mm,
think it's just like it's just an attempt to like make a dark situation ever so slightly lighter.
yeah, I just and I guess that works in context with the twist because we find out that's not what's happening. But I
Yeah.
just that line just really stuck out to me. I'm like, it's
Mm,
funny, but I'm like, Jesus, Doctor.
mm.
Like, what are you
That's
what are you doing there, man?
sure. Um,
Anyway,
yeah, I
yeah.
think is that all we need to discuss with this episode?
Um, I think I think so. Um,
Yeah,
I
I think it. I don't know.
I can't think of anything else that's really springing to mind. Again, I've already gone over some of the elements of the dialogue, and like I know I haven't literally analyzed every single piece of exposition, but like for people who are at home when they watch the episode, like they'll presumably know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
Yeah,
Um, After all that, what are you gonna where are you gonna rank this episode?
it's a toughie because again,
Mm.
you've s- you've
I'm gonna
swayed
give
me a little bit on Beat the Meep stuff, but I
sure,
still feel quite sour about it. And I think the biggest thing that let me down was that final last bit in the ending. The
sure.
fact that it was so rushed, that really, oh man, like,
I'm gonna give it a 7.
mm-hmm,
I think it was mostly really great, but there were small moments throughout and with the pacing that kind of held it back. I don't think that those moments detracted all too much from me because my main takeaway when watching this episode is my friends are back. Um,
mm,
it's these people that I know and love. The Doctor's well characterized again,
mm,
and for me it was more like uh, if this episode is a starting point, then we're going up from here, and that's even more exciting for me. Like I'm
yeah,
actually this episode made me really, really excited for the future of Doctor Who again, and
mm-hmm,
I can't remember the last time that I've thought this way.
yeah, yeah. I think. Oh, also, tiny little detail. He says Alonzi, and I'm sorry, I know I've gone into this before. I don't like catchphrases even when they're used in sitcoms, let
I
alone in a
mean,
show like Doctor Who.
I
And I
forgot
know,
about it. I forgot he said it 5 seconds after he said it. It's like a small moment. They don't shine a light on it. It's not that big a deal.
maybe I've just been soured by the Moffat years with bow
Maybe.
ties are cool and feathers are cool, but I think I even remember a couple of years ago I was just watching, I think it was Voyage of the Damned that was on TV,
Hmm.
and he says Alonzi, and I'm like, wow, it's not great even in this episode. So, you know, anyway, that is definitely a nitpick. That's very much a me thing, but I thought I'd
Sure.
highlight it regardless. Um, yeah, look, again, the first viewing, I was worried. I'll be honest, because
Sure.
again, the Beat the Meep stuff and the Roth Warriors, and especially that last little bit of the ending, the resolution of the meta crisis, that made me a bit nervous, and again gave me some sort of Chibnall flashbacks. But watching it a second time, I definitely know what you mean now in saying that when the bits are good, it did make me excited for the future. And I think even if there's elements in this story that I don't like, I think overall the worst I can say about them is that maybe this is just a bit of a stumbling block. Maybe this is just RTD trying to find his feet a little bit. And maybe, he only can improve from this point. And again, that's the bad stuff. The good stuff is really, really good. Um, as to whether I can't give it a 7.
Mhm.
I certainly don't think I can do that because I think it's mostly like the resolution of the meta crisis is obviously a problem, but we're both kind of
Yeah.
we're on the same page about that. But for me, in contrast to you, I think the Beep the Meep and the Roth Warrior stuff really um was a problem that I feel like I have to believe there was a better way of
Sure.
bringing the meta crisis in and sort of incorporating into the plot without bringing these characters in. So with that, I think after this discussion, I think I'm going to give it a 6.
Cool.
Yep.
All right.
I-
Before we sign off, let's quickly revisit our predictions for
Oh
these
yes,
string
cool.
of specials. We're going to
Yeah,
see if there's anything that we can confirm or anything we can tick off yet.
sure.
For skimming it, I don't think there's anything we can definitively say yes or no to yet.
Yeah.
My predictions that I made that are relevant to this episode are Donna is allowed to keep her memories but doesn't die,
Hmm.
which technically did happen, but we don't know if she dies in the future. in these next two episodes. She might die at the end of episode 3. So I'm
Yeah,
not
but I
going to give
think
myself the 400 just yet.
yeah, I think I mean I'd be fairly comfortable giving it to because I think I'd specifically said it's the idea of um you know her keeping them sort of and like her living is directly
But
related to resolving
the
of the
meta
meta
crisis.
crisis.
Okay, well, I'll
Yeah,
tentatively give myself the points for that now, even though we might have to walk it back a bit later on.
sure, why
So,
not?
so that's 400 for me at the moment.
Hmm.
You have two predictions that are relevant to this episode. One is Beep the Meat Redemption arc,
Hmm. That
which
definitely
again,
doesn't happen.
not in this, but again, it might still happen in the next
Mm,
couple of episodes. He
maybe,
might the meat might decide to turn on the toy maker at some point. So
maybe,
I'm not going to deny you those points just yet.
sure.
Your other prediction is Donna will sacrifice her life to save the day, which
Um,
I mean she did. I mean her intention was to do so. She didn't die, but like
again,
she made a bit of a sacrifice. I don't think I'm going to give this one to you
no,
just yet,
that's
on the
fine.
other
I'm
hand.
comfortable not getting those points because again, I think actually that was the moment where I very specifically said, um, like it had to do with the meta crisis, and she would like actually have to sacrifice her life completely.
Sure.
To yeah, so that's fine. I'm completely comfortable with
Sure,
that.
and she might sacrifice herself in the next
Yeah,
couple of
true.
episodes. I
It's
will give you
entirely
those
possible.
points. I will give you those points if that does happen.
Yeah.
So at the moment, 1 out of 3 specials in, the score is currently 400 to 0, which
Yeah.
isn't much yet. Like this could swing back.
Considering that we've got like, what is it? One of your predictions is that gave like 1.1 million
Yeah,
points.
yeah.
I
That
just find
that
that
one I'm still holding
funny.
out for. Um,
Uh,
yeah. I mean, anything can happen in the next couple of episodes.
mm,
Next time, and it's not going to be exactly a week from today when you're listening to this, but we'll be
mm,
reviewing Wild Blue Yonder, the second
yeah.
of 2 specials. I'm so looking forward to this one. I've seen the
Oh,
next time trailer. It looks really interesting and unique. I
I'm
can't
gonna have
wait.
to. I don't think I've watched it yet. I'm definitely gonna have to take a look at it. I will say one thing that did make me laugh, and granted, this is a meme I'm getting this off of, but it was from like the Doctor Who TARDIS posting.
Hmm.
Someone just said, "Oh, spoilers for Wild Blue Yonder," and it was a picture of like that nebulous background in the beginning with David Tennant, Peter Capaldi, and Jodie Whittaker in it, and I'm like, I'm gonna be honest, Cuff. If Capaldi and Jodie Whittaker show up in that episode and we get to see both of those characters written by RTD, my head's gonna fucking explode. I will be
That's
so
not
happy if that happens.
that's not in the trailer. But
It's highly unlikely, but like,
yeah, I mean, I would
my
love to
head's
see it
gonna
too.
explode.
Again, I don't think it's gonna happen.
No, I don't think so either. But like, can you imagine me just sitting there with my family and then this thing just showing up? I would, I would have to stifle a scream if
Mm,
that ever
mm.
happened. That'd
No,
be wild.
the second that Peter Capaldi comes back, written by Russell T Davies, is the second that I check out from this reality altogether and just become a swirling mass of ethereal positivity.
A swirling mass of positive ions. Yeah, okay, sure. Anyway,
Um,
we'll have to
yeah,
wait and see.
We'll see if I become a gas at any point in the future. Um, until then, I'm Alex,
I'm Fitz.
and meep meep.